The news didn't feel real at first. For decades, Chuck Norris had built a reputation that went beyond movies, beyond television, beyond even reality. He wasn't just a man to many people. He was a symbol of strength, discipline, control, the kind of person you assumed would just keep going. So when reports started coming in that he had passed away, people didn't react with immediate sadness. There was confusion first. Some thought it was another internet rumor. Others waited for confirmation. It took hours before major outlets began to report it seriously. Then it hit. The man who had spent a lifetime mastering his body, pushing limits, and staying active well into old age, was gone. The timing of his death quickly became a topic of discussion. It wasn't just about when it happened. It was about how little people seemed to know about his final days. There were no big public appearances near the end. No hospital updates. No drawn-out farewell. Just silence. Then the announcement. As the news spread, tributes started pouring in. Actors, fighters, longtime friends, and fans from all over the world shared stories. Some talked about his kindness. Others about his discipline. A few mentioned how private he had become in his later years. But while the public focused on remembering him, something else was happening behind closed doors. At his estate, people had already begun the process of going through his property. What started as a routine step quickly turned into something very different. Because the deeper they looked inside his home, the more questions started to come up. In the years leading up to his death, Chuck Norris had slowed down. That part wasn't a secret. He had stepped away from acting for the most part. Public appearances became rare. Interviews were even rarer. For someone who had once been everywhere, movies, television, talk shows, it was a noticeable shift. But stepping back didn't mean he disappeared completely. People close to him said he still followed a routine. He stayed disciplined. Even in his later years, he tried to keep up with light training, basic movement, and a structured daily schedule. It wasn't the same intensity he had in his prime, but the mindset never left him. Age, though, has its own rules. As time went on, there were quiet reports about his health. Nothing dramatic at first, just the kind of things that happen as the body gets older. Slower recovery, less energy, more time spent resting. Those closest to him noticed the changes more clearly. He wasn't as physically strong as before. His movements were more careful. Conversations sometimes drifted. There were days when he seemed completely fine, and others when he pulled back from everything. Still, he stayed at home. His estate became his main world, a place where he could control his environment, stay private, and avoid the constant attention that followed him for decades. In the final weeks, things started to shift more noticeably. According to people familiar with the situation, he had been spending even more time indoors. Fewer visitors, shorter conversations, a quieter routine. There was no major public warning, no sudden emergency that made headlines. It was gradual, the kind of change you only fully understand after it's already happened. On the day it happened, there was no dramatic scene reported to the public, no chaos, no rushed press conference, just a quiet confirmation. He had passed away at home. The exact timeline of his final hours was kept private, at least in the beginning. Family members and close contacts didn't share many details right away. That silence only added to the uncertainty. People wanted to know what had happened. How someone who built his entire life around strength and control could suddenly be gone without much explanation. And while the public waited for answers, inside the estate, something else was already unfolding. When the first official statement came out, it was brief. No long explanation. No detailed medical breakdown. Just the confirmation that Chuck Norris had died. Very quickly, speculation filled the gap. Some believed it was natural causes. Others thought there might have been an undisclosed illness. A few even questioned whether something had been kept hidden from the public for years. That's what happens when someone lives such a controlled, private life. The less people know, the more they try to guess. Eventually, more information started to surface. The official cause pointed toward natural health complications related to age. There were no signs of anything sudden or external. No accident. No foul play. No dramatic event. But even that didn't fully settle the conversation. Because people expected something different. They expected a man like Chuck Norris to go out in a way that matched the image he carried for decades. Strong, unshaken, in control until the very end. Instead, the reality was quieter, more human. Behind the image, behind the legend, there was still a body that aged like everyone else. Organs that slowed down. Systems that didn't work the same way anymore. People close to him later hinted that his health had been declining for some time. Not in a way that demanded public attention, but enough that those around him understood what was coming. There were no dramatic last words shared with the media. No final public message that wrapped everything up neatly. Just a private ending. Still, even after the cause of death became clearer, something didn't sit right with many people. Not because of how he died, but because of what started coming out next. Because while the world was still processing his death, those who entered his home began finding things no one expected. Things that didn't match the simple, controlled image he had shown for so many years. And once those discoveries started to surface, the story changed completely. The property itself didn't look unusual from the outside. The home of Chuck Norris sat on a large piece of land, quiet and controlled. High gates, long driveway, the kind of place designed to keep the world at a distance. It wasn't flashy in the way people might expect from a Hollywood name. No over-the-top design. No obvious attempt to impress. It felt more like a place built for routine, order, privacy. But once people stepped inside, the tone shifted. The first thing that stood out was how still everything felt. Not just quiet, still. Like nothing had been moved in a while. Rooms were clean, but not staged. Furniture was placed with purpose, not decoration. There were signs of a strict daily life. Shoes placed in exact positions. Training equipment arranged neatly. A schedule board in one area, still filled out. Times written down. Activities listed. It looked like something he had followed consistently, even near the end. But then there were details that didn't fit. Certain doors were locked. Not just one or two. Several. At first, that didn't raise immediate concern. Large homes often have private rooms, storage areas, personal spaces. But the placement of these doors felt deliberate, spread across different parts of the house. Some hidden behind normal-looking walls, others at the end of hallways that didn't appear on the main layout. When access was finally gained, that's when the situation changed. Inside one room, there were shelves filled with items that didn't match the rest of the house. Old documents. Boxes labeled in handwriting that looked decades old. Some of them sealed. Others already opened and partially sorted. Another room held equipment that looked far more serious than basic training gear. Not just weights or mats. More specialized tools. Some outdated. Some rarely seen outside of very specific environments. Then there was the room that caught the most attention. No windows. Reinforced door. Minimal furniture. Inside, there were stacks of materials. Papers, folders, recordings. All organized. Not randomly stored. Carefully arranged. Whoever had put it together knew exactly where everything was. And it didn't look like something done recently. It looked like something built over years. Maybe longer. The deeper they went, the more it became clear that parts of the house had been kept completely separate from everything else. These weren't just private spaces. They were controlled spaces. Rooms that didn't appear on standard layouts. Areas that required specific access. Some with additional locks. Others designed to blend in so well you wouldn't notice them unless you were looking closely. One of the hidden sections was behind what looked like a normal storage wall. Once opened, it revealed a narrow passage leading into a small series of connected rooms. Not large, but intentional. Each one serving a different purpose. The first room contained more documents. But these weren't casual notes or everyday paperwork. They were detailed, structured. Some of them dated back years, possibly decades. Names appeared, dates, locations, not explained, just recorded. The next room was different. It held personal items, things that didn't seem meant for anyone else to see. Old photographs, some familiar, some not. Pictures with people who weren't publicly connected to him. moments that had never been shared. There were also recordings, tapes, digital files, devices used to store them. Some labeled clearly, others marked with codes. And then there was one space that stood out more than anything else. A room that looked almost empty at first. Just a chair, a table, and a small set of drawers. Inside those drawers were items that raised immediate questions. Not because of what they were individually, but because of how they were grouped together. Things from completely different parts of his life. Different time periods. Different contexts. All kept in one place. Like they meant something when seen together. No explanation was left behind for any of it. No guide. No note telling anyone what it all meant. Just silence. And a growing sense that there was a side of his life that had never been shared publicly. Among everything found inside the estate, the most personal discoveries came from the written material. Boxes filled with notebooks, loose pages, sealed envelopes. At first, they looked like simple records, daily thoughts, notes, reminders. But once they were opened, it became clear they were something else. These were journals, and they went back years, possibly decades. The writing wasn't for an audience. It wasn't polished. It wasn't trying to explain anything to anyone. It was direct. Sometimes short, sometimes detailed. Some entries described normal days, training, meetings, family moments, routine things. But others were different. There were pages where the tone shifted completely. More serious, more private. Thoughts that didn't match the public image people had of him. He wrote about pressure. Not physical pressure, the kind people expected him to handle, but internal pressure. Expectations. The weight of always being seen a certain way. There were also references to moments he never talked about publicly. Situations that didn't make headlines. Interactions with people who were never part of his known circle. Some entries mentioned decisions that seemed important at the time, but without context, they were hard to fully understand. Names appeared again, just like in the documents found earlier. Repeated, in different entries, across different years. That pattern didn't go unnoticed. Then there were the letters. Some were addressed but never sent. Others looked like they had been written and sealed, then reopened later. The content of those letters was even more direct than the journals. No filtering, no holding back. He wrote things in those letters that he never said publicly. Thoughts about people, about events, about choices he made or didn't make. Some letters felt unfinished, like he stopped halfway through. Others ended abruptly, as if something interrupted him or he simply chose not to continue. There were also letters addressed to family members. More personal, more emotional. But even those carried a tone that felt different from what people expected. Less about image, more about reality. All of it painted a picture that didn't fully match the one the world had seen for decades. And the more those pages were read, the harder it became to separate the public figure from the private person he had been all along. At first, it looked like storage. Boxes, cases, shelves filled with items that didn't seem connected to each other. But once everything started getting organized and examined, a pattern began to form. The collection wasn't random. It was intentional. Inside the estate of Chuck Norris, they found items that went far beyond what anyone expected from a public figure known mostly for movies and martial arts. There were weapons, but not just the kind used for display or film. Some were old, not replicas, real, carefully maintained, labeled in a way that suggested they weren't just collectibles, but part of something more structured. Different styles, different origins, some tied to specific regions, others harder to trace. Next to those were items connected to his career, but not the kind fans had seen. Unreleased material, film reels, practice footage, test recordings, scenes that never made it into final cuts. Some labeled with project names that didn't match any known releases. It wasn't just leftovers from filming. Some of it looked like it had been created for something that was never completed or never meant to be public. Then there were objects that didn't fit either category. Artifacts, personal items, things that didn't clearly belong to his career or public life. A few looked like they came from different countries. Others seemed older than anything else in the house. Some were stored carefully, others hidden deeper, like they weren't meant to be found easily. One section of the collection stood out more than anything else. It was organized differently, not by type, not by time, but by connection. Items grouped together in ways that didn't make sense at first glance. A photograph placed next to a document. A small object stored with a handwritten note. Pieces that only seemed to relate if you already knew the story behind them. But no story was written down. No explanation was given. Just connections that someone had carefully arranged and left behind. As the physical items were being sorted, another part of the estate started to draw attention. The financial records. At first, everything looked standard. Accounts, property documents, known investments. The kind of financial structure you'd expect from someone with a long career in entertainment. But that didn't last long. Because once deeper records were reviewed, inconsistencies started to show up. There were accounts that hadn't been publicly known. Not illegal. Not hidden in a reckless way. Just quiet. Accounts tied to different locations. Different timelines. Some active. Some untouched for years. Then came the business documents. Partnerships that weren't widely reported. Investments in areas that didn't connect directly to his public image. Projects that had funding attached to them but no clear public outcome. It wasn't chaos. It was organized. Very organized. That's what made it harder to understand. Nothing looked accidental. Every record had structure. Dates lined up. Transfers made sense on paper. But the bigger picture, the reason behind it all, was missing. Some of the documents matched names that had already appeared in the journals and letters. That overlap didn't go unnoticed. It suggested that whatever he had been involved in wasn't limited to personal thoughts or private collections. It extended into real-world decisions. Financial ones. Then there were assets that hadn't been expected at all. Properties in places not commonly associated with him. Smaller holdings, spread out. Not flashy. Not public. Quiet investments. The kind that don't draw attention. Legal teams began reviewing everything, trying to piece it together. Not because anything looked immediately wrong, but because there was more there than anyone had been prepared for. And the more they uncovered, the clearer it became. There was a part of his life that had been carefully managed, deliberately kept out of view. Not hidden in panic, hidden with control. While all of this was being uncovered, his family was dealing with something very different. Grief came first. The loss of Chuck Norris wasn't public for them. It wasn't headlines or speculation. It was personal, immediate, quiet. But that didn't last long. Because as details from the estate started to surface, they were pulled into it. Some family members had known parts of his private life. That wasn't surprising. No one lives completely separate from the people closest to them. But this was different. The scale of what was being found went beyond what most of them expected. There were moments of recognition. Certain items. Certain names. Things that made sense once seen again. But there were also moments of confusion. Documents they had never heard of. Properties they didn't know existed. Writings that revealed thoughts he had never shared with them directly. That created tension. Not loud, public conflict, but quiet disagreement. Questions about what things meant. Who knew what? Why certain things had been kept separate. Some chose not to speak about it publicly at all. Others made brief statements, focusing only on his life, his legacy, and what he meant to them as a person. Very few addressed the discoveries directly, and when they did, it was careful, measured, because there was no clear explanation to give. Privately, the emotional impact was heavier. Reading his journals, seeing his handwriting, going through personal items he had chosen to keep hidden, it changed how they saw certain parts of his life. Not everything, but enough. There were conversations that didn't have easy answers. Memories that felt different when placed next to what had been found. And through all of it, one thing remained clear. They were learning about him in a way they never had before. Not through stories he told, but through things he left behind. Once the details started leaking out, everything changed. First, it was small. A mention here. A report there. Nothing too specific. Just enough to hint that something unusual had been found inside the estate of Chuck Norris. But that didn't last long. The story spread fast. Media outlets picked it up. Online discussions exploded. People who had followed him for years suddenly found themselves trying to understand a version of him they had never seen before. Clips resurfaced. Old interviews were rewatched. Fans started comparing the man they thought they knew with the details coming out now. And the gap between those two versions. It was hard to ignore. Some people refused to believe it. They saw the reports as exaggerated, misinterpreted, taken out of context. To them, Chuck Norris was exactly who he had always been. Disciplined, controlled, straightforward. Nothing more, nothing less. Others weren't so sure. They looked at the journals, the hidden rooms, the collections, the financial records, and they started asking questions. Not loud accusations, just questions. Why keep so much hidden? Why organize everything so carefully, but leave no explanation? Why were the same names showing up across different parts of his private life? The internet didn't wait for answers. Theories started forming almost immediately. Some grounded, others far more extreme. People tried to connect dots that may or may not have been connected at all. And the more the story spread, the more complicated it became. Because no single discovery explained everything. Each piece added something new, but also made the overall picture harder to understand. Even experts who looked into the situation, legal teams, analysts, investigators, couldn't give one clear explanation that tied it all together. There was structure, there was intent, but there was no final answer. And maybe that was the most unsettling part. The idea that someone could live such a public life for decades and still leave behind so many unanswered questions. As time passed, the intensity of the coverage started to slow. New stories took over. Public attention shifted. But the questions didn't disappear. They stayed in the background. Quiet. Unresolved. And for those who had followed his life closely, one thought kept coming back. How much of a person do we actually see? And how much stays hidden until it's too late? In the end, nothing about this story feels clean. The life of Chuck Norris looked simple from the outside. Strong, disciplined, controlled. The kind of life people thought they understood just by watching it. But inside that estate, it was different. Rooms no one knew about, writings no one had read, decisions no one fully understood. Piece after piece that didn't quite fit the image the world had held onto for decades. And maybe that's the part that stays with you. Not just what was found, but the fact that it was there all along, hidden in plain sight. So the next time you think you really know someone, especially someone the whole world has been watching for years, you might want to think again. Because sometimes, the real story doesn't come out until everything is already over. If this video made you stop and think, hit like and subscribe. Because there are more stories like this, ones that look simple on the surface, until you see what's underneath.